This is Grammy Award-winning guitarist Jim Kimo West, and I'm here with Dave and Ethan, and together they are Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 112-inch.
On this week's episode, we welcome the Grammy Award-winning guitarist and episode 1-inch guest, Jim Kimo West, back to the podcast.
Okay, Kimo, you do the honors.
And now let's hear that pretty stinking majestic theme song.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
It's a podcast about Weird Al.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Seriously, the whole podcast is about Weird Al.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
You don't have to listen, but we're glad you are.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Well, thank you, Kimo. It's always great to hear our official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast theme song as performed by you.
All right, well, we're going to be back with Kimo shortly, but first, let's go on to this week in Weird Al-related news.
We have some very sad news to share. Maybe you've seen this online. It was just shared this past Thursday. But actor John Paragon, who played Richard Fletcher in UHF, has unfortunately passed away.
Now, John, he actually died back on April 3rd, but his death was not made public until last Thursday.
Now, besides his memorable role in UHF as R.J. Fletcher's son, you will also recognize John Paragon from the television series Pee-wee's Playhouse, where he portrayed the character Jambi the Genie.
Now, Jambi's catchphrase, Mecca Lecca Hi, Mecca Hiney Ho, that will sound familiar to Weird Al fans because that exact phrase can be heard in Weird Al's song, Pretty Fly for a Rabbi.
Now, here's a really cool connection. 2 years before the release of UHF, back in 1987, Weird Al performed at the annual Halloween Haunt event at Knott's Berry's Farm with none other than John Paragon.
Now, John Paragon, he was performing under the name Ramon Azteca at those shows, and not only did he open for Weird Al, but Al's band backed him during his set.
John, he was extremely funny. He was such a talented guy, and we absolutely loved him, and we know that so many fans are hurting right now. So we want to share our deepest condolences to John's family, friends, and fans. So from all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, Gill and chill in peace, John.
Last Friday, June 18th, was the theatrical debut of the Sparks Brothers documentary by filmmaker Edgar Wright. And as we reported earlier, Weird Al has a cameo in it. Now, Ethan, I understand you saw the Sparks Brothers documentary last weekend?
Actually, yes. I'm really excited.
Oh, that sound means we have a message on the official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast 347 Spatula Hotline. All right, let's take a listen.
Dave and Ethan, it's Kenneth. The Sparks documentary, absolutely bodacious. Amazing, amazing. If those of you listening haven't seen it yet, I would highly recommend it. It is a great film showcasing the whole career of the Sparks Brothers, all of their albums, the beginning to the end, to the future. Who knows when they'll stop? The music was great. Learning about them was great. The story was magnificent. Also seeing Al in it was amazing. Anyway, I really liked it. Definitely a go-see documentary. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Kenneth, for calling the official 347 Spatula Hotline with your review of the Sparks Brothers documentary. Man, I cannot wait to see this film. And Ethan, I'm so sorry that you got cut off before, but you were going to say something about the Sparks Brothers documentary. Would you like to share your review with us now?
Yes, thank you, Dave.
Oh, sorry, Ethan. You know, this call is a little more important than your review. Let's take a listen to it.
Hey, it's Ethan.
And hey, it's Trevor.
And we just saw the Sparks Brothers.
Yes, we did. What were your thoughts? I have one.
I thought that there should have been more Weird Al.
You know, you and I think very much alike. I agree. Otherwise, it was a delightful time.
It was great, yeah. I mean, if there was maybe 2 hours worth of Weird Al talking about them, it would have been my favorite movie I've seen in a year. But because it is the only movie I've seen in the theater in a year, I'm still going to say it's my favorite movie I've seen in a year.
Plus, it's the only movie you've seen in the theater in a year with Weird Al.
That's true.
So it really has a lot going for it.
You got to see it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you.
All right. Thanks, Dave and Ethan.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Well, thank you so much for that review of the Sparks Brothers documentary, Trevor Son. And I'm sorry, but I missed that other guy's name. Anyway, Trevor, I really enjoyed your review. Your friend's review was, okay. He just sounded like a weirdo. I'm sorry. I know it's really not my place to say this, Trevor, but I think maybe you should get some new friends.
Hey! I was going to say that too. You are totally right, Dave. That other guy sounded like a total weirdo. But anyway, I saw the film and it was really pretty stinking majestic. I have to say, the story was incredible. Their music was really great. And the cameos throughout the film, Weird Al, Patton Oswalt, Flea, it was great. It was really great. And everything about it was really well put together and really funny. Weird Al is only in it very briefly. You see 2 really short clips of him right in the beginning. One where he's playing accordion, but I don't think you can even hear the accordion. He talks like 2 more times in the film. So it's very brief. It's over a 2-hour film. And Al is really not in it very much. So if you are interested in seeing it primarily just to see Weird Al, that's probably not your best idea. But if you have any interest in the subject matter, this really quirky, weird band who have just sustained their career since the late 60s, early 70s, all the way up until now, and they are just 2 really interesting, weird, talented guys, then you are going to love it. So I highly recommend seeing the Sparks Brothers while it's still in theaters.
Well, thank you for your review, Ethan. Next time, maybe you can call in your review to the 347 Spatula Hotline.
All right. Yeah.
Well, if anyone else has seen the film and wants to weigh in, please do call the 347 Spatula Hotline, and you might even hear your review on a future episode.
Now, in addition to the Sparks Brothers being released last Friday was also the release date for the Grammy Award-winning episode 112-inch guest Jim Kimo West's brand new album, Kahonua Maluhia, Peaceful World.
Now, this album is pretty stinking majestic. It's got 12 great tracks on it, and one of my favorites is the last track, Queen's Lullaby, and that's because it reminds me of Canadian nickels.
If you want to pick up the physical copy of the album, head over to jimkimowest.com, or of course head to iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere digital music is to check out the album digitally. And Dave, we really should have Jim on the podcast to talk about this new album.
You are absolutely right. Let's see. How about next week?
Yeah, lock it in.
Perfect.
Meanwhile, this week's episode is brought to you in part by Vegan Burrito Restaurant Burrito in Troy, New York, home of the 2-pound double wrapped in a quesadilla Burrito, and Wizard Burger in Albany, New York. Come on down to Burrito and Burrito your Burrito, or hop on over to Wizard Burger for mouth-watering, loaded, dare I say, beefy vegan burgers. From Troy to Albany to Uranus, Burrito and Wizard Burger feed the hungry with out-of-this-world, plant-based, real food, always vegan style. Visit burritosquare.com or wizardburger.com and order ahead.
Now, a few weeks back, we mentioned how Weird Al was once again a guest on Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast.
And you may also remember that the event was recorded live on Zoom, and both Dave and I were in attendance.
Well, that episode with Weird Al has finally been published and is available now to listen. You can head on over to gilbertpodcast.com or find it wherever you find podcasts, or you can check out Weird Al's social media for a link.
And prior to Weird Al posting about it being out, we found out from our listener and friend, Samantha Evans. Thanks for the heads up.
Patreon supporter Blair Freeman let us know that he heard Weird Al on yet another podcast last week, the Office Ladies podcast with Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey.
Blair let us know that Weird Al comes up in conversation around 50 minutes into episode 80, and they even played a clip of Al playing accordion on the Pennsylvania polka with the Scrantones from a private rehearsal tape.
Thank you for that heads up, Blair. It is always great when Al comes up in conversation where you least expect him to.
For more context and to hear that pretty stinking majestic clip of Al playing the Pennsylvania polka, check out the Office Ladies podcast.
There's some exciting news from FumpFest. Dr. Demento alumni Sulu has been added to their lineup.
For tickets and more information, be sure to head to fumpfest.com.
Both Ethan and I really wish we could be there. So if you plan to attend, please let us know so we can live vicariously through you.
Here's a big reminder. This Saturday, June 26th, is the Magic for Memories event with episode 111-inch, aka last week's guest, magician Justin Willman.
Ethan and I, we both have our tickets already, so hopefully we will see you all there.
We just know that it's going to be an incredible event, and it's for such an incredible cause, and Weird Al being there, that just makes it 1 billion times better.
For tickets and more information, head on over to magicformemories.com.
I just can't wait for the event on Saturday, but luckily, we don't have to wait any longer for this week's interview.
Our next guest is fresh off of a Grammy Award win, and he just released his newest album, Kaho Nua Maluhia, Peaceful World, this past Friday. Fans of Weird Al will instantly recognize him as the lead guitarist for nearly 40 years, and fans of this podcast will instantly recognize him as the writer of our Pretty Stinkin' Majestic theme song. Please welcome back to the podcast and give a big aloha to Jim Kimo West. Welcome back, Jim. So nice to talk to you again.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks for so much for having me on again. It was a pleasure the first time, and again this time.
You know, we wanted to start the podcast on a strong note, and really there was no better way than having the Jim Kimo West on. So thank you again for joining us back then and again right now.
My pleasure.
I mean, there's so much to get to. We haven't talked to you on the podcast in over 2 years, and so much happened. We talked about the Grammy Award winning. You released a couple new albums, and, you know, you've been on tour with Weird Al with an entire orchestra. There's just so much to get to. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, it's amazing that it's been 2 years. It's hard to believe, but a lot's been going on. Of course, we had the Strings Attached tour with Weird Al that was just amazing, with a full orchestra every night. That was a first for all of us, really, to have an orchestral tour, and that was just exceptional and so much fun. Just amazing.
Dave and I, we went to 18 of the shows each, and it was just a blast for us in the audience. I can't imagine what it was like being on stage for all those shows.
Well, it's always great to, on that tour we did play some pretty wonderful venues like Red Rocks and, some nice big venues. So that was one of the great things about that tour, was to play some big places, and having that huge band behind you was you had a real feeling of power with that going on.
Oh, sure, yeah.
As far as rehearsing for the tour, how is it different than other tours when you have to consider the backup singers and the orchestra, or was it kind of a similar process?
Well, it was pretty straightforward. We basically played the tunes that we knew, and the orchestra more or less followed us. Generally, we weren't really having to follow them. The conductor made sure that the orchestra followed along with us, so we didn't have to do too much different than what we normally do. The only thing I think that was a little different was because we had backup singers. I know some of my vocal parts changed, just to accommodate the female backup singers, but otherwise it was pretty straightforward, and not for the band, I don't think it was too much of a stretch. It was really just do what we're used to doing, and the orchestra will just follow along.
Right. That is an interesting point about your backup vocals. It's something I guess I hadn't considered. When you're actually listening to a Weird Al song, are you singing your backup parts, or are you singing like the main lyrics? Like, when you're casually listening.
Gee, sometimes I do remember my backup parts, but generally on the albums, usually it's Al singing all the parts. There's a few exceptions on some older tunes where we sang parts as well. Mm-hmm. Live, of course, is another story. I do a lot of background vocal singing live. It's just part of the gig, but on the Strings Attached tour, since we had the 3 female background vocalists, we Al did change some of my vocal parts, and actually there was there was some that I didn't have to sing because they were covering it. So it was actually overall a little bit easier for me.
Yeah.
Now, did you actually have to change any of the music that you had to play, or was it just the singing part that you had to change? Like, did the orchestra take over any of your parts that you normally would have played?
No, not really. From what I remember, it was we pretty much just played what we normally play, and the orchestral arrangements were done around the band parts, so they just sort of fit like a glove around what we were already doing.
Okay, yeah, kind of. It's supplemented what you and the rest of the guys up on the stage were doing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I for me, I pretty much was doing what I normally do, and the orchestra was just making it bigger.
Based on what you're saying, it kind of sounds like when you look at the last two tours, the Strings Attached tour and the Ill-Advised Vanity tour, the Vanity tour is supposed to be this stripped down, very easy tour. And it sounds like that was probably even more complicated for you because you had all those cover songs to learn compared to the giant tour with the orchestra, the singers, and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's true. The Vanity tour was much, much more work. First of all, we started off with a song list of almost 60 songs because we had to we were going to do a different set every night. So,
right.
We had to basically have almost 60 songs learned and ready to go. And then, of course, every night we were learning another cover song. So essentially that's, 60 plus 77, 137, almost maybe 130,
Wow.
135 songs to learn for the tour.
Oh, man.
So comparatively, the Strings Attached tour, we were mostly doing stuff that we'd already done before. So it was, for me, it was much easier.
Wow. While you were on stage with the orchestra, did you ever have any interactions with them or any moments with the orchestra that you remember that stand out, something maybe that happened in the orchestra that you caught wind of or anything to that effect? Any memorable experiences working with the orchestra?
Gee, it's hard to remember. I mean, I know there were some nights where the orchestra was, better than others, and some of the smaller, towns, they probably didn't have as a big a pool of musicians to draw from. So, on some of the shows, I think the orchestra was, a little bit. I remember there was one tour where I think the guy playing the snare drum was always off. It was or something. Oh, no. I can't remember what show it was, but generally on that tour, I don't have the orchestra too loud in my monitors because I need to focus on the band,
Yeah.
where I need to focus on my part and the band's part. So, but gradually over the tour, I would have them bring the level of the orchestra up a little more all the time, just as I got more comfortable with it. But essentially, my job really was to focus on my parts and the band, and make sure that was solid. So sometimes I wasn't listening to the orchestra that much,
So you mentioned a couple of the venues you performed at, Red Rocks Amphitheater and probably Wolf Trap. Were there any venues that really stood out to you and that maybe you had never played before or had not played in a while that really you enjoyed playing on the Strings Attached tour?
Well, I would have to say Red Rocks was definitely the standout. Now, we had played there many, many years ago, I think when we were on tour with the Monkees back in the 80s.
Yeah.
I think that's when we played there. But to play there as the headliner and have it sold out, and with the Colorado Symphony Orchestra and their conductor, and it was pretty. That was pretty much the pinnacle, I think, of the tour for me. Anyway,
Yeah.
we did play places with more people, but I think Red Rocks was probably around 9,000. But it was an amazing experience for sure.
Wait, you played venues with more people than Red Rocks on the Strings Attached tour? That place was huge. Ethan and I were there. I was near the front and I could not see the back of the crowd there. But you played bigger places than that on the Strings Attached tour?
I think so. I mean, I think there were at least a couple gigs that had more people. I can't quite remember.
Wow.
Maybe what was it in New York? The Forest Hills or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Oh, Forest Hills?
That might have
okay.
been. That was pretty big, yeah. I can't remember, but I don't think Red Rocks was the largest number of people, but certainly was the one that stood out to me.
Wow.
No, it was only every other show, but the song that really always stood out on the Strings Attached Tour for me was You Don't Love Me Anymore. And, of course, at the end of the song, Al smashes the guitar. And I have to believe some of it's acting, but some of it is real fear in your face when he's smashing that right next to you.
Yeah, I just always have to take a quick look and make sure he didn't pick up one of my guitars by mistake. I remember right before one of our shows, I had an idea for Al, and I mentioned it to him right before we went on, and I said, "Hey, Al, you should before You Don't Love Me Anymore, you should tell the audience that that the Martin Guitar Corporation was kind enough to loan you this vintage priceless Martin guitar that was just only one of a kind. It was so nice that they were, and he was so he did that whole build up, and he also did a shout out to the guys are out in the audience, thanks guys so much, and they were happy, they were so kind to loan it to us because we had a problem with the last guitar, and and so he used that as the intro, and then I'm sure people were horrified when he smashed it. I should have been a comedy writer. I mean, that was a good gag.
That's a great gag. I wish I saw that one. Did you ever get hit by the flying pieces? Any injuries sustained?
Well, I do remember getting, hit and not hurt, but I remember pieces flying. Sometimes they would just explode,
Yeah.
And I think think Al himself once years ago had a shard of a sliver of wood just went right up his nose. And he was
Wow.
Yeah, he needs to wear goggles when he does that.
Nose plugs, goggles. Wow.
Now, are those guitars that are used that he smashes in You Don't Love Me Anymore? Are they like gimmicked? Are they weakened at all, or are they like really just authentic guitars and he's just smashing them as hard as he can to try to break them?
They're real guitars. I think they loosen the strings on them a little bit so they don't really explode. But
right.
No, they're real guitars. Yeah, they're real guitars, and they're just something that the promoter provides. But over the years, I got to. I got in the habit of always checking out the guitar that they were going to smash for that evening, just in case something, really cool came in. And,
Right.
because they might have gone to a pawn shop and maybe, got something that was really valuable. But I do remember once there was an old Hawaiian lap steel guitar, acoustic guitar, and I said, "Oh, you can't smash that," I said, I'll take that, and they said, well, it's actually okay because we have another guitar from one night where we, had an extra guitar. We didn't do 2 shows or something. So I took that guitar home and I ended up using that on like some Honda commercials and
Wow.
using it on using it on some recordings. Yeah, I still have it. Yeah.
Wow. Good thing you checked.
Yeah, I saved it from being smashed. So.
Wow.
Wow. So now when you travel with Weird Al and you're going to be performing You Don't Love Me Anymore, do you bring like a spare, really cheap guitar just in case that happens again? You're like, here, I'll just switch this out.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. It's just to keep one on hand. Yeah.
I'll take this and I'll trade you for this one.
Yeah. So way back, episode 1 inch, when we first talked to you on the podcast, it was still before the tour even happened, and we are still speculating, and you told us about how Weasel Stomping Day was going to be on tour, and you said you weren't sure if you're going to have to wear a weasel costume. And so, I mean, at least the shows I went to, you weren't wearing a weasel costume. How did that turn out?
Yeah, no weasel costumes.
Okay.
He didn't have to play anything, of course, because we were just singing it. The orchestra was doing all the work. But
yeah.
Right.
But it was actually fun. It was fun for me. That song was fun for me because I on the original recording, I did all the orchestra parts, on a sampler,
Yeah.
So I came up with the arrangement for it, and so on the tour, of course, now I get to hear it, played by a real orchestra, which was, kind of a thrill to hear the parts that you came up with all those years ago.
Yeah.
Played with by a real orchestra. That was pretty cool.
And you did, I mean, there was no weasel costume, but you did get to wear the Viking helmets.
Right. Yeah, we had some Viking helmets, right.
It's a good compromise, I assume.
Yep.
Now, one thing Dave and I did is each show we went to, we recorded a podcast episode where we reviewed that show. And I mean, after a while, it's the same show over and over. So we really started getting desperate, and we were trying to find different things. And one thing we noticed, and we ended up reporting on every single episode, was at one point you got a haircut. And I was just wondering, do you still have that haircut, or, whatever happened to it?
Gee, I don't remember. So, say it again. I got a haircut?
It's more of a joke question, but yeah, you got a haircut at one point on the tour. So every episode we would be like, and Jim still has his haircut.
Yeah, well, that's yeah. I don't remember, but yeah, probably.
Oh, we took note of it.
Yeah. Geez, I don't remember, but makes sense.
There are hours and hours of recorded audio of us discussing your haircut. So, if you ever need to relive that,
Okay.
So I'm wondering, Jim, is there any chance that we get a new Weird Al tour coming up anytime soon?
Well, the rumor is that there'll be one next year. That's what I'm hearing, and of course, it depends on so many things right now. Normally, a tour we would just say when we're going to tour, and then that's when we would tour. But I know a lot of acts are getting out there are planning to be out in the fall, or late summer and fall, but. I'm sure we're not going to be doing that, but I think if there is, it'll be next year. Sometime, maybe, I don't know, spring or summer. Maybe, I'm not really totally sure, but what I understand is that they're looking at trying to do a tour next year, and that would be really fun for sure. We haven't played. If I can remember the songs, it's been a while.
That would be absolutely amazing, yeah.
Oh, I cannot wait to see you guys back on the road. Now, if you had your choice, just looking at the entire catalog of songs you've worked on with Al over the years, is there a song that you would love to play live that maybe you've never performed live or only did on one tour or anything like that?
Gee, that's a good question. Well, I love Genius in France, but it's such a complicated song. I don't know that we could, pull it off live. I mean, it's so complex, and I mean, I would love to give it a shot, but
yeah,
I'm not sure. It's got a lot going on. A lot of background vocals, and it probably is not possible.
I mean, you guys pulled off Jackson Park Express really incredibly. So, maybe someday, right?
Yeah. Jackson Park Express was a complicated song. It's one of the only ones that I ended up needing a chart for the whole tour. It was just too much to commit to memory,
Right.
Wow.
I can imagine.
And, it's not unprecedented to have long songs. Of course, you did Albuquerque on tour as well. So there's another precedent there for long songs.
Well, with Albuquerque, it's kind of the same thing over and over again. And I remember we would play it so fast that I the part on the record is all played with downstrokes on the guitar, and to get to be more aggressive. And after doing that for all those. However long that song is, I mean, after a while, my wrist would start cramping up, and it's like, okay, I can't take this much longer.
Wow.
Wow.
What is the most difficult song to perform live? Is it Jackson Park Express? Is it Albuquerque?
Well, not really. I mean, I think the most difficult songs for me would be songs where I'm really having to play a lot and sing a lot.
Yeah.
and there were a number of tunes like that on the Vanity tour, where I really had to sing a lot on that tour. I had my own teleprompter, and because there were so many lyrics, and I think overall most of the songs, I don't find anything too hard to play, but it's usually when it comes to the combination of playing and singing, and sometimes
Right.
you're playing something completely different than what you're singing, and for me that's the most difficult. You just have to do it over and over and over again until it's natural. But to me that's the hardest stuff. I can't really think of any particular examples, but a lot of that stuff on the Vanity tour was like that,
Right.
where you got a lot of rocking going on the guitar and lead lines, and you're singing at the same time and trying to split your brain into two pieces, So
Let's hope that the rumors of a 2022 tour are true. And if they are true, what kind of tour, Jim, would you be looking forward to? Would be another strings attached tour? Would you be interested in doing another Vanity tour, or going back to like a mandatory fun style tour?
Yeah, I don't know. I like all those tours, and for the different. I don't think it would be an orchestral tour, because I think they're talking about trying to maybe tour in other parts of the world, and I just think overall it would be so complex. But But it's not my decision, so I really don't know. But the Vanity tour, even though it was a lot of work, was a lot of fun musically. It was really something where it really challenges you, and in that respect, I kind of like that idea a lot.
Right.
It's not like you it's not like you just get. You go through the motions. If it's this, one of these, some of the bigger tours, it's the same set every night, and there's not much variation in the show. So you can kind of, almost phone it in, I guess, sometimes. But,
Right.
But on the Vanity tour, you can't do that. You have to really, be at the top of your game, and so even though it was a lot of work, it is kind of fulfilling in that respect.
We spoke to someone who actually worked on the Stitcher end of the Vanity tour, our friend Lex Friedman. He's a Weird Al fan, and he was talking about how, getting to have that instant kind of feedback of hearing the previous night's show. Is that something where you like getting to listen back and hear how a show went, or are you someone who's just like, I did it, I just want to move forward, do the next show?
Yeah, I didn't really listen to the previous shows, but I would hear little bits and pieces every so often that somebody would be playing, and sometimes there'd be some video we'd watch, and it was always interesting to see it. I always like checking it out, but a lot of times it would just be iPhone videos on YouTube. It was, you could, the next day you could go to YouTube and there were iPhone videos of the show from last night.
Yeah.
And it was kind of nice, to hear some of them where you'd see the video on YouTube, and you could hear everything, and it would be like, oh my God, I can hear all the instruments.
Right.
The mix must be really good, for the iPhone, for the phone video to still sound good.
Right.
So sometimes that was really, really kind of cool to hear, just the people's iPhone videos.
Oh yeah, especially since the mix is different for what you hear on stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
cool.
I know. Al listens to the playbacks a lot in the first few weeks of the tour to make sure that the sound people are getting all their cues and everything like that. Mm-hmm. I don't listen back to him so much, but I do. Every so often I get to hear some, and it's pretty cool to listen back to it.
So I know it's still early to think about this. If you were out on tour in 2022, would there be any chance that there might be a supplemental Jim Kimo West tour that followed along with that as well?
That's a good question. I've sort of thought about, maybe trying to play a few shows here and there. It's a little difficult because, things can change, schedules can change, and if I booked a show, like say on a night off, logistically it would be fine, but then again, what happens if we don't stay in town that day? They decide to travel the next day. Then,
Right.
I've got to get myself. I got to get myself to the next place, and so it is a little complicated, but I might try to do it. I might try, maybe not a tour, but I might try and play a few shows here and there if it looks like it's possible. But it's always nice to do that, because if you're in town and you've got a night off, and you're already there, why not try to play a show? So I know a couple of times I've done that, and Al's come down and played accordion with me.
That's so
Wow.
cool.
So it might happen.
He plays accordion on your songs, then, not his songs. You're not playing his songs, then, right?
Yeah.
He's
Well,
playing on your
I
songs.
think the last couple of times he joined us, he would play on something of mine, and then we would do something else, like "Buy Me a Condo." I think was good because it's sort of a reggae islandy thing,
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we've done that a few times, but yeah, it's fun. I remember once playing in Nashville, and he came down, and we didn't announce it or anything. It was just a surprise, and
Right.
I had a pretty good crowd in there. But then after Al got up and played, then I think everybody got on their phone and started texting everybody, and all of a sudden the place got really jammed. The word got out, But yeah, we've had some fun times like that. It's cool.
I think maybe the best time you've ever done a solo show was the one that I booked for you before your Schenectady show on the second Mandatory Fun Tour.
Oh, that's right. I remember that one. Yeah.
I mean, how convenient. It was in the same venue, same day as the Weird Al show. It was so great.
Yeah, it was right there in the same building. That's right.
Now, I'm curious, when you are getting ready to go out and tour with Al, what is your process for rehearsal? Is it something where you guys kind of do it on your own, or do you guys get together in the same room and play through the songs?
Yeah, it's both, really. I mean, basically, when Al's got the song list, he sends us the song list, and he'll send us, reference materials and charts, and so we have a few weeks ahead of any rehearsals to go through the stuff and learn and go over things we need to go, or learn things we need to learn. And then when we come to rehearsal, we've generally got the parts learned,
Right.
and then it's just a matter of playing them through and just ironing out the bugs, and and if we're doing something that we've done before a million times, then of course that's not much work. We just kind of have to just refresh. It's just more of a refresher.
Yeah.
And in fact, on the Mandatory tour, I'm sorry, on the Strings Attached tour, all those songs we pretty much, except Jackson Park Express, we pretty much played those. Well, we had played Jackson Park Express before too, but all the other tunes, I probably could have just jumped in there with no rehearsal and played that show. Except for the the backup vocals, of course. I had to change some of those, but
Right.
But yeah, musically, the stuff that we've played for years, if we're playing those tunes again, then it's more of just a refresher. But especially with anything new and new material, then we do our homework for a few weeks before we start rehearsing.
Now, I know we haven't really had the Yoda chant in many years, since it's just been kind of these, different types of tours. But when that happens, is that something where Al's like, okay, this is the new Yoda chant, or is that more of a collaborative process?
Usually he comes up with it, but in the early days, when we first started doing the Yoda chant, we would sit in the back of the bus and we would just sort of brainstorm and come up with crazy stuff, So some of the early Yoda chants were collaborative in a way. We'd sort of come up with stuff in the back, while we're riding down the road and in the bus, and then of course, as you know, it just got longer and longer. Al would find unusual things, and we would put it all together, and Yeah. The Yoda chant was one reason I could never get somebody to fill in for me. That's I could never expect anybody to learn the whole show and then learn that too. It'd be like, forget it. You know?
That's got to be so much fun, though.
Yeah, I gotta imagine that's a lot to learn. How long did it take you to learn that all those movements that you have to do up there for the Yoda chant?
Well, I mean, we never learned it all at once. We started off with it very small, short, and since you're adding to it, you're just kind of remembering your previous parts and then adding something new to it. So in that respect, it wasn't too hard. It was just really just learning the new part for the tour, and then piecing it all together and so it wasn't, it would be very, very hard for somebody just to come in and learn it all fresh, learn the whole thing from scratch.
Have you guys ever discussed doing like a studio recording of the Yoda chant, like officially put it down on a track?
I haven't heard anybody talk about it, but that would be cool.
That would be really cool.
Al could put that out. He could put it out as a single on Spotify.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I am curious, I guess, just about your origin in the Weird Al band, just going all the way back, almost 40 years. The story I've always heard is that you were suggested by Steve J. Is that how it went?
Yeah, Steve and I knew each other from Florida because we both grew up there and played in bands. We played in some bands together there. And once we were both out in L.A., Steve had met Al, got called to play bass on Al's very first record, the record that when he got his record deal with Scotty Brothers, and the one that has Ricky and Rocky Road on it. And I remember he called me one day and just said, "Hey, this guy Al is looking for a guitar player, and he's going to audition guitar players, and he plays accordion." And I said, "Well, does he have any gigs?" And Steve said, "Yeah, he's got some gigs, paying gigs." But so I just went down and I auditioned. I learned a few of his tunes and auditioned. And then one day he called me on the phone and said, "You got the gig." And wow. We started doing some smallish gigs around L.A., more or less kind of as a warm up to a bigger show that was the famous Santa Monica Civic Center, where we opened for Missing Persons.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And that's the one. Yeah, it's the one where they basically threw everything the audience threw anything they could at us.
Jeez.
Yeah, but yeah, that's essentially how it happened. Yeah.
And was it just like, each album and each tour, was it like, "Hey Jim," or you want to do this one, or was it just sort of, at what point did it become like you are the guitar player and you're not just someone being brought in?
Well, it was pretty much like that. Once I joined the band, once I passed the audition, it was, I was the guitar player, and pretty much was. There were a couple of times way back when, because I had this alternate career writing music for film and TV, and there were a couple of times when it didn't work out and I had somebody fill in for me. That was a long, long, long time ago, though. Mm-hmm. But
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's, I've always been the guitar player, pretty much.
And for the audition itself, was it Al and Jay and Rick Derringer, or what was the lineup of or how did the audition go?
I don't think. No, it was just Al and Bermuda and Steve and myself, and then I think they had another couple of guitar players that came in and played a bit, but. It was just basically running over a few tunes of his tunes. And
do you have any memory of what tunes you played in the audition?
Some of Al's really older stuff. Maybe "Stop Dragging My Car Around," possibly.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, but
yeah.
There were, a couple of 2 or 3 tunes from that era. And I remember on those songs, demos maybe they were, I'm not sure, I thought, I said, the guitar on there is really good. And Bermuda goes, yeah, it's my brother playing. Bermuda's brother is Richard Bennett, who's quite a well-known guitarist in Nashville. Well, he was in L.A. at the time, but Richard has played with Mark Knopfler for many, many years.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was. I remember where the place was too. It was I think. Well, I know we used to rehearse sometimes down in Hollywood, on Cahuenga, at this little rehearsal studio place. It might have been down there that I auditioned.
Yeah.
One of those hole-in-the-wall audition rehearsal spaces.
And before Steve approached you, had you heard of Weird Al before?
Yeah, I actually had. I didn't realize it at the time, but then I realized, I remember hearing something. I used to play in a big club in Florida, like a house band gig for a couple of years almost, and I remember once the DJ, they used to get a lot of records from TK Records in Miami, and he played this thing, and it was like, and I just went up to him and said, "What is that?" And he goes, "It's this guy, Weird Al," and it was Another One Rides the Bus,
Wow.
And it was funny because it sounded so out of place because they were playing a lot of, kind of, I don't know, disco tracks and things like that over the sound system, and then that came on. It was like that really stood out.
Yeah.
But but I do remember hearing that many years ago. One time at this club, and then I put two and two together. I was like, oh, it's that guy.
Wow. And so I guess going even further back, do you remember how you met Steve? Was it just? Did you audition for the band he was in, or?
No, well, I think we met in college. We were both in the same college, and I didn't stick with the college. I got into music at a pretty early age, and but I was always hanging out there. We in the music department with all the people I played in bands with were all in the music department, and so I knew him from college, and then at some point we started playing in a couple bands together.
Yeah, I saw a photo of you and Steve in a band called, is it Livingston or Livingstone?
Oh, Livingstone, yeah. That was that might have been the first band I played in with them. It was it was kind of like a band that played in I seem to be kind of hotel bars and stuff.
Okay.
It wasn't my favorite. It was a good band, but it wasn't my favorite kind of circuit to play. And I was more into the rock clubs and stuff. But
yeah.
But it was a good band. But then I think that morphed into a band called Zazu, which was actually quite a good band. We played in much hipper places.
Oh, cool.
So.
And do you recall what age did you first join a band? What was the first band you ever were part of?
I can't remember the name of it, or if it even had a name, but it was, I was 16 and they had, I think it was bass, drums, and guitar, and there was a guy singer and two girl singers, and I don't even remember the name of it, but they basically only had one gig.
Yeah.
They had one gig, but it was a good gig. It was at a fair, I think it was some kind of fair, and we rehearsed, a whole bunch, and then we played this, our set at this fair, in the bleachers and, a big stage and everything, and I remember I got paid $40, which in that time was, I was 16, and it was like, hey, this is pretty groovy, man.
Yeah.
I played music for an hour and made some money,
Yeah.
That's great.
And back in those days, that was a good chunk of change, but yeah, I have one memory from that is that I'd never played in front of people before. It was my first time. I was kind of nervous.
Yeah.
And on one song, I had to use a wah-wah pedal. So it's that pedal you use. It goes wah, and I was so nervous that my foot started shaking. So the sound was going wah 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 wah.
Oh man.
And somebody later was, wow, how'd you get that sound? That was really cool.
So your first on-stage performance at 16, when did you first pick up a guitar?
Oh, probably when I was about 12 or something, and I played mostly by myself because I didn't know any other guitar players. But then, in high school, I met a guy who played guitar, a couple guys who played guitar, and, got to, kind of jam a bit with other people. And then one day, one of my friends in high school just said, hey, do you want to be part of our band? And I was like, okay.
Did any of these early bands that you were in, like Living Stone or Zazu, did they ever put out any commercial recordings or anything to that effect?
No, back then, no. Sadly, no. But there were, I probably have some cassettes of live recordings of some of those bands. That would be all I have. I don't remember there being any actual real records, like studio things or anything like that. There was a band I was in, original band called Mithril, Mythril. It was a really interesting band, very kind of, I would say, prog rock band, at the time. A lot of original material, and we did make a recording, a 3-song demo, I'd guess call it, but it was a real recording, and that was pretty cool. I still have copies of that here somewhere.
Cool.
Not sure where, but it was, but yeah, that's, I think that's the only thing from back in those days that was actually really recorded.
And was your recording with Mithril, was that the first time you were ever on commercial recording like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was commercial because it was never released. It was like really more of a demo. Okay,
gotcha.
Yeah.
But it was the first time in an actual studio. I'd done recording before at home with my own, little tape recorders and stuff.
Right.
But that was the first real studio recording, that I had done.
Hey, Jim, would you mind sticking around just a bit longer? I feel like we barely scratched the surface, and we have so much more to chat about.
Sure. Sounds great, guys. Let's finish this interview on next week's episode.
Sounds great, Jim. In the meantime, be sure to grab Jim's incredible brand new album, Ka Hanua Maluhia, Peaceful World, at jimkimowest.com. All right, Jim, we'll talk to you next week.
Awesome.
Hey, Ethan, it's time for an ad.
Wow, Dave, you are right. It's time for our David Grant ad this week.
We know he's David Grant, but did we also know he's MC Choskin and writes books and stuff? I don't know, I'll add more stuff later.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for reminding me about all that great stuff David Grant has done and has available on his website.
Ethan, can you please remind me of David Grant's website?
Well, Dave, it's obviously wolfinwool.com.
Well, that's right, wolfinwool.com.
Yep, wolfinwool.com.
Ah, David Grant.
Yes, David Grant.
This week's episode is also brought to you in part by Discover Darwin, promoting tourism in Darwin, Minnesota. Not only is historic Darwin, Minnesota beautiful, it's also, oh no, banking!
Hey, Dave, look! Someone sent us a letter!
Ooh, let me see.
What's it say? What's it say?
Hold on. To whom it may concern.
Oh, I think that means us!
We have found that you are in violation.
Oh, no. This is for intern Frank, okay.
You are in violation of code 372-580, section 6 of the Canadian Podcasting Standards and Practices Bureau of Canadian Wellbeing and Standard Practice.
Oh no, that can't be good. What did Frank do this time?
Well, it seems like our Discover Darwin ad being about perennial bang so many weeks in a row is very frowned upon.
Well, what's the punishment?
Well, it says here the punishment is that we will no longer be receiving the annual Canadian Podcasting Standards and Practices Bureau of Canadian Wellbeing and Standard Practice holiday card.
No! We need that holiday card, Dave. What can we do? Is there a fine? I don't care how much it costs. That's what Patreon is for.
All right. Calm down. It says here, in order to invalidate the injunction on our holiday card, we just have to say sorry.
Absolutely not.
Well, in me saying that we have to say sorry, that in fact counted as us saying sorry, and now I've said it 3 times.
Well, there goes your holiday card from me, Dave.
So visit Darwin, Minnesota on your next expedition. Discover Darwin more than just a twine ball. And after you visit Darwin, Minnesota, be sure to visit discoverdarwin.biz.
Each week, we're able to bring you our podcast absolutely free thanks to our sponsors Burrito Burrito, Discover Darwin, Jackson Scoggins, and David Grant.
And thank you to our amazing close personal friend Patreon supporters Jake, Javier, UH Jeff, Zeb, Allison, Blair, Frank from the Bank, Kenneth, and Jared. And thanks to Joe and everyone else in our pretty stinking majestic Patreon family.
If you enjoy our family-friendly weekly Weird Al podcast, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/2000inch or by picking up some pretty stinking majestic official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast merchandise, like t-shirts, pillows, tank tops, and more over at shop.2000inch.com.
Remember, right now, Patreon supporters can check out the first 2 episodes of the Black and White and Weird All Over bonus episode series, our special book series where we sit down with author John Bermuda Schwartz and we go page by page, picture by picture, centimeter by centimeter through his book, Black and White and Weird All Over. Patreon supporters get to hear all bonus episodes early. Everyone else, stay tuned. Frank said he would post them outside of Patreon once he finishes our laundry.
We love hearing from our listeners and other Weird Al fans. Join our Facebook community and post about Weird Al by visiting group.2000inch.com. And we also love it when we receive voicemail via our official 27-hour-a-day podcast hotline, 347-SPATULA. You might even hear your message on the air.
For everything about our podcast, including incredible past episodes and guests, be sure to visit WeirdOwlPodcast.com or 2000inch.com and keep up on new episodes, podcast news, and events by following at 2000inch on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thank you for subscribing and leaving reviews on Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Spotify, Stitcher, or the podcast app of your choice.
Thank you once again for not only being our guest, but for being the incredible Grammy Award-winning composer and singer of our incredible theme song, Jim Kimo West. Also, big thank you to Kenneth Gwinnett, Trevor Oakley, Trevor's weird friend, Samantha Evans, Blair Freeman, and Zeb Lemke. And thank you to Weird Al, as this podcast probably wouldn't exist without him. And a big thanks to all of you, our listeners, subscribers, Patreon supporters, and sponsors, and everyone else who makes our podcast possible.
Thank you for listening to Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast. And always remember to gill and chill.
And be sure to tune in next week for part 2 of our incredible interview with the Grammy Award-winning theme song writer, Jim Kimo West.
Oh, and look at this. He also plays slack key guitar.
Oh, and I think he's in Weird Al's band, too.
That was Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 112-inch.
Mecca lecca hi, mecca hiney ho.
Happy Father's Day, Dad.
What is this piece of crap? I thought I told you I wanted a Rolex!